What's up, guys? This is Emma from the Urban Botanist. In today's video, I'm going to be recapping some of the amazing things that we learned during our live virtual Lee Valley workshop video, which I will link below in the description. Please leave me a comment. Let me know how you liked it. Let me know what plants you are propagating at home or some plants that you might want to see me propagate in a next video. All right? So if you didn't catch the Lee Valley workshop, that's fine. Essentially, this video is going to be doing a quick little overview of all of the things that we chatted about during that session. We're talking about propagation, okay? What is it? Why do we do it? And different methods of propagating. I'm so excited. I love propagation. It's an amazing way to grow your plant collection for free. Well, for the price of the first plant that you bought, or maybe you were gifted a plant from someone else's propagation, which we love. We love to see it. But basically, what propagation is the act of taking a cutting, whether it be a leaf cutting, a stem cutting, for example, and turning it into another new plant. You're cloning a new plant. You can also propagate by division, so separating a plant at the base through root separation. That one can definitely work as well for certain species. But one of the main things that I like to talk about is making sure that you are using the right propagation technique for the right plant. A lot of times people can get that mixed up, and while I'm not going to be going over every single plant in existence and every single method that they use for propagation, I will be talking about the easiest methods for propagating during this workshop. I'm going to be using water and soil propagation. So just keep in mind that these are just, the easiest ways to do it. This is not necessarily all the ways to propagate. There are a multitude of ways that you can propagate. And like I said, it's based on the type of plant that you're working with. Is it a hardwood? Is it a softwood? Is it an indoor, an outdoor? Lots of different variables come into play. But I'm going to be mostly talking about indoor tropical plants and how you can propagate them at home. All right, so the first plant that I'm gonna get started with, because it was highly asked for, is the Begonia maculata. Look at this gorgeous freaking plant. It's kind of getting out of control here. So one thing that I might do is take some cuttings from it just to control the growth, and that's one reason for why you might propagate a plant, is maybe it's getting really unruly, maybe it's getting really long, it's outgrowing the space. Or maybe, for example, you have a pothos at home that's really kind of just like bare and scraggly looking, for example. So sometimes what I will do is take cuttings of that pothos or of that plant. It can be your Adansonii, it can be, any of these kind of plants. And what I'll do is I'll take cuttings, get them to root, and then I'll repot them back into that original mother pot. So it kind of is a great way to really add more body and foliage to your existing, maybe kind of scraggly looking plant. So that's a great, another great reason for why you would propagate. But this guy here is a really good example, apart from your standard pothos, for where you would want to propagate on something like this. So basically, when you're taking a stem cutting, you always want to first go to, of course, the stem, and look along the stem and see anywhere where a leaf meets the stem is where you want to take your cutting from. Anywhere where the leaf meets the stem, that little leaf stem is called a petiole, and wherever that meets a main stem is called a node. And the node is right where you want to take your cutting from, so right below. Now, I'm not going to cut this guy just because it's perfect, more or less, right now, but I will show you this little cutting that I did take from it. So I just cut right below a node, as you can see, 45-degree angle. You want to give it a cut on, straight will work, don't get me wrong, but I like cutting on a 45-degree angle because it creates more surface area for that plant to root from. So for this guy, that's where you're going to want to cut, right below a node, right below where a petiole would be growing from. On a rose, for example, that could look like a thorn. So right below a thorn. And that basically what you're doing when you're making that cut is you're inflicting a wound site on your plant, which sounds a little scary. But essentially what that's doing is it's encouraging that plant to release growth hormones, which are found in the nodes, shockingly not, to start producing that root growth hormone and start rooting, which is really cool stuff. So that's how you would take a cutting from a Begonia maculata. Now let's talk about a pothos. This is, probably one of the easiest plants to take cuttings from. The easiest, in my opinion, would probably be a snake plant, where you can literally just take cuttings, like literally just cut the swords, cut the foliage right off, plunk them into water, roots will grow, you can repot them. It's honestly amazing, super easy. And I'll show you guys that too. But you see how big and full this pothos is? I get a lot of questions. How do you get your pothos so full? How do you get them so big? Cuttings, seriously. Check out these cuttings here that I've taken. I've got a whole bunch more here. Woo, look at how long this is. It's insane, it's so gorgeous. So this was taken from a really mature and unruly pothos plant that I have. I'm taking some cuttings and I'm gonna root them and put them in other parts of my, my plant collection to add some more greenery. Maybe I'm gonna pot it up and give it to a friend who would love a nice long pothos. But essentially taking cuttings from a really mature long one, getting it to root and then repotting it into the mother pot is a great way to kind of fill out existing kind of scraggly looking pothos plants. So again, these plants, super easy. You're going to look for a node anywhere. I'm gonna show you on this guy, anywhere where the leaf is meeting the stem. So just right below it. And you can also see on some of these plants, Adansonii is included, Monstera deliciosa is included. You'll see on the stem, these little bumps, these little like horns almost. And those are essentially the beginnings of roots, aerial roots, modified roots that are acting as a support system for the plant. These are crawlers, these are vine-like growing plants, in their natural habitat. They'd use those little nubs to attach themselves or create contact with trees or rocks, something like that, to grow up towards or down or to the side to maximize sunlight hitting their leaves. Of course, sunlight equals photosynthesis equals energy for the plant to grow. So basically wherever you see those little horns growing out is where roots will more than likely start on your pothos plant. All your cuttings really need is a bright space and for you to consistently top up the water, because of course the plant will be absorbing the water and it will be evaporating. So make sure that you're topping up the water, as well as ensure that you're replenishing that water every so often. You want to make sure that this plant always has fresh, clean, algae-free water. I also just really like the way that these fresh cut greens look in a glass vase. It's a nice way to add a little pop of greenery to your shelf, to a table, to a little dull corner of your space. Another plant I will show you guys how to propagate, and this one is one of my favorites, especially for you gardeners turned chefs, or anyone that really loves using fresh herbs in the kitchen, which I do, totally changes a meal, is I'll show you how to propagate rosemary. See these probably look super familiar to you, these horrible plastic containers that cost $6 at the grocery store, and look at all this waste. Well, I'm gonna teach you how to actually take one of these sprigs of rosemary and turn them into multiple growing sprigs of rosemary. You can also do this with thyme. I'll show you with that one too. And basically, I'm gonna show you how easy it is to propagate and grow these as well. So first things first, you need a clean pair of shears. Make sure you've disinfected them. We're all familiar with Lysol these days. But you want to make sure you're disinfecting your shears first so that you're not introducing any bacterial or fungal agents to that wound site that you're inflicting on your plant. That's a no-go. And also when you're taking your cuttings, you always want to make sure that you're taking cuttings from a healthy, green, robust plant. That can be another reason for why your cuttings are maybe failing and not taking so well, is maybe you're like, oh, you know what, this is an ugly part of the plant, I'll take a cutting. It's not looking so good. And you cut that part off and it's actually, not a very healthy part of the plant, so it may not do so well. So let's go back to this rosemary. Basically what I'm gonna do is I'm going to look for a node. A node is once again, anywhere where a leaf is meeting the main stem. Luckily with rosemary, super easy to see. And I'm gonna show you guys on this one. You can see a node here, you can see a node here, here, this is an offshoot, this is an offshoot. And I'm just gonna take my cutting right below that node. Now from here, you can try water propagation. I've been doing soil propagation with the rosemary. And another thing that I've been using that I highly recommend is stem root. You can pick this up at your local nursery. Garden centers tend to have it. Lee Valley does carry this as well. And this kind of just gives you a leg up if you're looking to have that edge when it comes to propagating. This stuff works amazing. I find it increases my cuttings by 20%, you know, their probability of taking by about 20%. So this is just like a powdery stuff. I basically just do a little dip, shake it off, and then I put it into soil. See my little grow dome here, compliments gifted by Lee Valley, amazing. You can see I did these guys yesterday. And you see how they're nice and full and they're sprouted up and they don't look like they've just been cut in half, for those of you who are afraid. Look at them, they're doing their thing. And then from there, I'm just gonna stick it right into my grow medium. Here I've used a mixture of 1 to 4 cocoa coir to potting soil. Cocoa coir is like a coconut husk. It's really great for water retention and water release. So, you know, fresh, new growing young roots tend to do really well in a cocoa coir soil mix. I would recommend. I also have a little station here with sphagnum moss doing its thing, and you know, I've actually found that my cuttings have done really quite well in the sphagnum moss. So I kind of did a little bit of a project, a little experiment, you know, to see how well my Fittonia cuttings were taking to soil versus sphagnum moss. Ultimately, they both took really well, but I actually think the sphagnum moss was a little bit better. I used growth hormone, that's stem root, for all of my cuttings. Another option that you can use for instead of growth hormone, if you're wanting to use something more natural, is you can use honey, I've heard, cinnamon, apple cider vinegar. They've got a lot of antifungal, antibacterial properties, which in a lot of the cases is what can cause your cutting to not take so well. So, you know, give it a try. Have a little experiment set up like I do. It's honestly fun, and not much else to do indoors these days except grow your friggin' plant collection. Am I right? I'm totally right. Okay, let's talk about leaf propagation. And I've used a peperomia watermelon for this guy here. I quite literally took a leaf. Look at the roots on this. Woo! So amazing. It's literally magic. Jeez. I get so excited with propagation, but I literally took a leaf, I cut it in half, I let the wound site heal, I placed it on top of soil, and lo and behold, I didn't use any root stem with this either. Roots started to grow and a whole new little baby plant. Look at this little cutie. Started to grow also. Freaking amazing. I absolutely love it. Its mama plant is close by. The mama plant is really nice, big, healthy. I just took a little cutting from her. You can also do root cuttings. That works fine. This guy here, or not root cuttings, rather stem cuttings. This guy here is from a stem. This was the main leaf. I made sure to cut from a node, and look at this whole new baby that's growing too. Look at this, multiple plants from one. Amazing gifts. Amazing way to grow your own collection on a budget. Why wouldn't you try propagating? Okay, I'm also going to show you how to propagate a cactus because I have one here that's freshly propagated. So let's pretend it looked like this. Let's just pretend. Look at this. This is literally how easy it is to propagate a cactus. I just cut this in half. You want to make sure that you're letting the wound site callus over or heal over. You can do this with any type of cactus as well. You can do them with the cereus, those sort of cylindrical, saguaro looking cacti. Again, the wound site, you really want to make sure that you're allowing it to callus over, because if you were to take this and stick it right into soil, it's going to rot. So once it's calloused over, this is almost 24 hours and it's looking nice and healed. With something that's a little bit more thick, you're going to, of course, probably require it to have a couple extra days to fully callus over and fully heal before sticking it into soil. And believe it or not, that cactus is going to root. It's going to grow and become its own new cactus. Okay, Emma, but what about this guy that you chopped the head off of? Sorry, I'm sorry. This guy will continue to grow. He'll probably push out a new arm here or a new arm there. I always find it so interesting to see how plants react to the cuttings that you take from them. This Adansonii, for example, I can see where the grower who I bought this from would have taken cuttings from the plant itself and where the plant decided to diverge from and grow. That's another really cool thing about propagating is it really is an experiment every single time. There's no way to really, forecast exactly how a plant is going to grow or, react to the cutting that you take from it. So super, super cool. All right, other reasons for why your cuttings might fail. Now, when you're thinking about your cuttings, you want to take into consideration 3 elements, all of which are equally important. The first we've kind of talked about is making sure that you're taking your cutting from the correct part of the plant. For example, rosemary is a little bit more of a hardwood, but at the top of the rosemary is really quite soft. So you don't want to take your cutting from the soft part of your rosemary, for example. You want to take your cutting closer down to the woodier part of that stalk. The second way that, cuttings can tend to fail is by using the wrong method for the wrong plant. And that's really quite common. For example, some people might think, oh, okay, cool, like that leaf cutting is really neat. I'm gonna give that a shot. And maybe you're trying it with an Adansonii or a pothos. Not the right technique or method for that plant variety. It's best to always do a quick Google search, look it up, go onto YouTube, see someone who's done it before, and surely, the internet these days, there's something out there for you. So that's another reason for why cuttings fail. You're maybe taking the wrong technique into your propagation method. And the third way is managing variables and the growing variables. So for example, I'm gonna pull this guy over here. Your 4 variables that you have to take into consideration when you want to grow successful cuttings is sunlight. Natural indirect sunlight works great. You can have a grow light, works even better. Humidity. High humidity, especially for these really tropical plants. Photonia love humidity. For example, all of your calatheas love high humidity, and it really helps to encourage that root growth. But also too much humidity cannot be good for other cuttings. Hardwoods kind of prefer a little bit more of a cooler or drier, setup, for example, than a softwood would. Softwood wood, yeah, double wood. So we got humidity, we got sunlight, heat, temperature. I find that putting, a little heat pad, or if you've got one of those heat pads underneath your cutting, setup, that helps. Too much heat, not good. Too little heat or too cold, also not good. And then the last one is soil moisture. So really playing around with those 4 variables. And it really is an experiment every time. I love this Mondi propagation hut. The tops have these little groovy vents that you can open and kind of manage the humidity inside. They also have a thermostat that pairs really well with this, also available on Lee Valley Tools. I believe they have free shipping right now, over $30. And that's a great tool to use for getting the precise levels of humidity inside of your growing station, whether it be this, a little greenhouse, wherever it is that you're growing. If you're trying to really understand and analyze those metrics, those variables, those are some tools that are super helpful. But essentially, maybe your cutting didn't take because it was too humid, not humid enough, too moist, not moist enough, not enough natural sunlight, not enough heat. So these are all different variables that you have to kind of play around with. And of course, it's always depending on the plant that you're propagating as well. Now, believe it or not, this beautiful Monstera deliciosa, my prized possession, actually started out as a cutting. A friend of mine gave me literally one leaf with a root on it 4 years ago, right before I started the Urban Botanist and started my plant passion and obsession in my collection, and said, hey, here's a cutting, put it in soil, see what happens. And I was like, I looked at him like he was crazy. But he wasn't crazy. Maybe he was. We're all crazy. We're all plant crazy. But that grew into this amazing plant. And the Monstera deliciosa is one of the most highly requested. How do I propagate it? And truly it is so easy. What I will start out with saying, and where people do tend to make the mistake, is by cutting just a stem with the leaf off. This is not going to grow. This is not going to do anything. You have to make sure that you're hitting a node. So that's where the stem is actually meeting the main stem. You can also see that there are aerial roots growing off of this plant, which bonus points if you get an aerial root in your cutting. But basically you can place that directly into water, you can place it directly into soil, and it will re-root and grow. How freaking amazing is that? So that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please feel free to subscribe to my channel, give me a like, leave me a little note in the comments. I'll get back to you. Follow me on Instagram. I'm at the Urban Botanist, and we will see you in the next video. Keep on growing.